Well, today, let me give you kind of one last talk about like the big ideas, and then I'll give you some more practical things about how this curriculum works. So first of all, in terms of the big ideas, let's talk about some of the attributes that any student needs. First of all, you need respect. You need respect for the actual subject that you are undertaking. You need respect for what Chesterton called the democracy of the dead, which is the idea that the people of the past, they have something to say and it's worth hearing. Secondly, you need, and any student needs this, I need this, we all need this, repentance. And Tolkien said that education ought to be little more than a form of intellectual repentance. If it is more than that or less than that, horrors result. What he means is that education should not puff us up with knowledge. It should not, if we get great grades, make us think, yes, I've got it together, I'm better than that person over there. It should not cause us that kind of pride. If it does, then, well, there's the horrors. We become that person. Rather, there should be repentance because we should constantly be acknowledging that we're not yet who we're called to be, but God is sanctifying us by His grace. Third, and along very similar lines, we need humility. Sir William Haley, the great astronomer, said that education would be so much more effective if its purpose was to ensure that by the time they leave school, every boy and girl should know how much they don't know and be imbued with a lifelong desire to know it. See, education, when it really works, it steadily will teach you that there's so much more you don't know. I find that as the more I read, especially in the subject of history, the more I realize how much there is I don't actually know. And the more I reevaluate the opinions that I made when I was young and seemed to be so confident when I thought I knew everything. It turns out that as I get older, I know less and less, even though I may know more knowledge. Fourth, you need new affections. You need proper loves. Remember, Socrates said that the whole object or goal of education is to teach us to love what is beautiful. That is to love what is right, the right things, which means to love God Himself. Augustine merely said, worship orders our disordered loves. Meaning, when we come before an infinite God, it has a way of ordering the mess of our heart. And that's something that develops throughout time. So when you're approaching these subjects, I've already called upon you to develop a love for them, and that's a supernatural thing. But part of that development of the love is by pursuing them faithfully. It's sort of like when you're trying new foods and you don't like them and you keep trying them over the years and eventually you develop a taste for them and you suddenly recognize, oh, this is why adults love this. It's sort of like that. Fifth, you need sanctification. Again, something that is supernaturally given. It's important that you have good habits. The spiritual disciplines of actually attending worship, of reading the scriptures, of prayer are all necessary, but also good habits of study are necessary for any class. So let's talk about some of the studying, some of the specific assignments you'll be doing for this class. You'll, of course, be watching these videos and taking notes on them, later reviewing your notes. You'll also be taking exams at the end of every single lesson. The exams will require you to know the facts, but they'll especially ask you to think on things or to make connections or really to ask the question, why do these things matter or why is this significant? Then you'll also have the readings. There's actually readings for all of the days in the week in which you don't have an exam. Most of these readings are primary source readings, meaning they're from the actual time period. I'm having you read these because I want you to read the great works of the past. I want you to actually hear these people talk for themselves. So they're mostly for your own edification, your own contemplation. Another assignment that you'll be working on throughout the year is called the portfolio. The portfolio is basically a visual scrapbook. So since we don't have a textbook, so to speak, for this class, I mean, we have the reader, but we don't have something filled with pictures, you're going to be making your own visual scrapbook. So you can use a scrapbook, you can use some kind of drawing pad or drawing journal, you can use an unlined journal that might be used for writing, that's fine too, just so long as it has high quality paper. But in that, every week, for every lesson, you need to make an entry that has a title. You can use the lesson title or you can come up with your own. An entry that has maybe great artworks of the past showing what we've talked about, or perhaps maps or quotations, poems, or some other related media. You need at least 5 items that you will arrange for each entry, as well as at least one quote. A quote from perhaps one of the characters of that time, or maybe by somebody else talking about that time. If you really like drawing yourself, well, I have an option for you too. Instead of doing the 5 items plus a quote, you can make your own drawing and add the quote as well, but just do one drawing for the actual entry. Make sure that for your drawings, as well as for the 5 items you put in there, and you can do more if you want, make sure they have captions explaining what the picture or map is, unless of course it already has it written in there. You also want to make sure that you show a great concern for craftsmanship. You want to make sure that you cut out these images or you draw these images as well as you can. It's often helpful to make borders. Sometimes students will take colorful papers like cardstock, for example, and they will mount whatever they've printed online onto that and then cut out a larger section so that it has a border. And then how you arrange things, how you design the page, the whole entry, and sometimes you may have multiple pages, all of that matters. Make sure that you fill the page. Make sure that you arrange it neatly and in a way that is visually pleasing. I often find that this is a project or really an assignment that students love, especially because it allows them to do something hands-on or something artistic. Now, the other great assignment is your first project. Typically, I give a project for every single quarter or every single so many lessons. This year, however, there's only one project for the entire first semester and then 2 projects for the second semester. Let's talk about that first project. It's a big one. It's called the Family Tree and Heraldic Crest Project. Even the title is kind of long. Well, this project actually has 3 parts. You're going to be making a family tree. You're going to be writing a report, or more like a memoir, on your family's history. And you're going to be creating, designing, or perhaps recreating a family crest. So let's talk about each of these in turn. First of all, you're going to begin with research. You're going to need to gather basic family history information in order to make your family tree, which needs to go back at least 4 generations past you, all the way to your great-great-grandparents. To the best of your ability, you may not be able to find all this information, but to the best of your ability, you need to get all the names that should go on that family tree. You want to look for birth and death dates, the place where they lived, as well as their vocation and the names of their children. In some cases, depending on how you actually design your family tree, you may not be able to put all this information on there. That's fine. You can put it in the report. The reason that I'm having you do this is I want you to know your own rich family history. In terms of the actual tree, you can draw it. If you do that, make sure you put it on high quality paper. Make sure that you carefully write out all of those names. I've seen family trees done as a poster. I've seen them done on a scroll that unrolled. In fact, I had one student trace her family history all the way back to Charlemagne. I think when we unrolled the scroll, it was longer than the classroom. I've also seen family trees done in a book format. I've seen them wood burned. I've seen them painted. I've seen them even made out of metal. There's a million ways you can go about it. Now, while you're getting information about your family tree or for your family tree, which is just basic family info, you also want to interview at least 2 family members, preferably elderly family members, preferably one from each side of the family. And of course, if you can interview more than 2, do so. But what you're looking for is you're looking for their stories. You want to know about their life, about their childhood, about what things were like back then, but also what they can tell you about family members who are no longer living. You want to gather that, and that's where you're going to find the real gold in this project. You're going to uncover probably some amazing stories. You may uncover some tragedies as well. That's actually quite likely. You may uncover some family members who you'd rather forget. That's also possible. And in fact, sometimes, depending on your family dynamics, you may not be able to interview everybody you'd like to interview. But what my hope is that you will find incredible things about your family history that's worth knowing. It may be things that have been overcome by God's grace. Or it may be amazing things about the past, about faithfulness of your ancestors. You're like, okay, that is something that I want to remember. That's something that's going to inspire me. And then you'll actually be writing a family report, a report of what you discovered about your family history, which is really going to be almost like, well, a family history or a memoir. Finally, in the third part, and why this project is so big, you'll be creating a family crest. You may reproduce an existing family crest based upon your last name, or you may create your own. You may design your own family crest, either because there isn't one out there or you just want to. Whatever the case may be, if you design your own, you want to make sure that everything you choose for the crest, every image, every design, every color, because they all have meaning, you want to make sure that they all fit the characteristics of your family that you have discovered based upon your research. There's actually a heraldry guide to go along with this so that you can know the meaning of every symbol, every shape, and every color that shows up on an actual crest. As for the crest, as the medium you're going to be making it out of, pretty much anything your imagination comes up with. If you want to paint it, you want to wood burn it, you want to carve it, you want to sculpt it, you want to sew it, make it out of metal, or make it out of paper, any of those things are fine, just so long as they show craftsmanship, so long as they are basically display worthy. And then finally, you'll present this project to an audience. This is one doozy of a project, but it's a project that I find to be remarkably rewarding because it's going to teach you things that you didn't know about your own family history. Enjoy.